Hayate Ayasaki is a 16-year-old boy who is deeply in debt because of his parents, who don't work. A childhood vision of Santa Claus has inspired him to work hard and earnestly. His body is unnaturally sturdy, able to withstand all kinds of physical damage and punishment. During Christmas Eve, Hayate is fired from his job as a bicycle delivery man after his parents notify his boss about Hayate being underage. His boss tells Hayate that he gave his paycheck for the month, 170,000 yen, to his parents. Hayate is mortified, knowing his parents would spend it on ridiculous dreams and expenses. He races home, where he finds that his mother has already used almost all the money for a failed dream. He finds an envelope left behind by his parents as a Christmas gift, a debt of 156 million yen to loan sharks. Hayate escapes just as they arrive and goes to a park, where he is angry at Santa Claus for saying that hard work will eventually pay off. Hayate sees a young girl, 13-year-old Nagi Sensinen, attempting to buy from a vending machine using a credit card. He contemplates kidnapping her for ransom to pay off his debt, but he instinctively jumps out to defend her from guys who were hitting on her. Hayate gives the freezing Nagi his jacket, and in exchange, Nagi asks Hayate what he wants. Hayate still decides to kidnap her, but his choice of words makes Nagi think that Hayate is asking her out on a date. Hayate fails in trying to call for ransom after giving out his name, and he collapses from exhaustion. But he is found by a girl, and he cries from this random act of compassion. They see Nagi being kidnapped, and Hayate chases after her on bike, rescuing her. Nagi asks Hayate again what he would like as a reward, and Hayate asks for help in finding a new job, as he collapses once again. Nagi says that Hayate would be a good candidate as her new butler. Hayate awakens at the Sanzanin mansion, where he learns that the girl who saved him yesterday, Maria, is Nagi's maid. Nagi invites Hayate to be her butler, as a replacement for her previous one, Himegami, and he accepts. However, the head butler Klaus is distrusting of him and wants Hayate to get kicked out. Maria, aware of Hayate's debt, is reluctant to do so, and instead begins training Hayate at his new job. Maria is impressed by how well Hayate is cleaning, further removing any reason to have him removed. When Hayate enters a study room and accidentally reads one of Nagi's manga, she angrily kicks him out, and Hayate is picked up by the loan sharks from yesterday. A while later, Maria shows Nagi Hayate's debt, which Nagi had no idea about, and they go to look for him. Hayate is brought to a seaport, where he is to be used as slave labor. He is rescued by Nagi disguised as a heroine, masks the money, as she is too embarrassed to show her real face. The loan sharks demand the full repayment of Hayate's debt, which Nagi pays back in full. They accept the payment, and remark that Nagi must now collect the debt from Hayate. As a result, Hayate will work off his debt as a butler of the Sanzanin estate. The next day, Maria explains that it would take Hayate 40 years to completely pay off his debt, and he resolves to work hard to pay it off. Maria asks Hayate to wake up Nagi for breakfast, but when he enters her room, he sees a giant white tiger sleeping with her. Nagi awakens and explains that the white tiger is her cat, Tama. Klaus, who was hiding under the bed, jeers at Hayate for being intimidated by Tama, but he is attacked by Tama. Before Tama can attack Hayate, Nagi calms him down, causing him to become docile. However, Nagi instead has them fight outside in the garden, and Klaus proposes that if Hayate can defeat Tama, then he can stay. However, Klaus and Nagi realize that Hayate and Tama are fighting along a flower bed that Maria tends to, and when she sees her flowers ruined, she glares at Klaus and Nagi, vowing to give them a stern lecture after she treats Hayate's injuries. Maria explains to Hayate that Nagi found Tama abandoned as a kitten and brought him back with her. Because Tama has gotten used to a life of luxury at the mansion, he is ill-suited to live in the wild or at the zoo. She reassures Hayate that Tama is loyal to Nagi, just like him. Maria leaves, and Hayate learns that Tama can talk, a fact nobody else knows. Klaus is still opposed to Hayate, so Maria proposes they test Hayate's combat abilities. Klaus prepares a nursing robot meant to compete against Hayate's housekeeping abilities, but when Nagi insults the robot's appearance, it attacks, and Hayate jumps in to defend her. Hayate defeats the robot by electrocuting it, forcing Klaus to accept Hayate for the meantime. One day, Nagi forgets to bring her lunch, so Maria instructs Hayate to bring it to her. He is stopped at the gates by a teacher, Yukiji Katsura, who thinks he is an intruder, but he manages to slip by her. Hayate meets Hinagiku, who is stuck up on a tree after rescuing a baby bird. She asks Hayate to catch her as she jumps, but she ends up stepping on Hayate's face as she lands. They apologize to each other, and they become acquainted. Hinagiku, who is the student council president, offers to bring Hayate up to the school clock tower, which Hayate was admiring earlier. Meanwhile, Yukiji instructs the 3 female students to help them look for Hayate, who is still treated as an intruder. Yukiji finds Hayate at the clock tower, who takes away the bento box meant for Nagi and taunts Hinagiku by standing near a ledge, knowing Hinagiku is afraid of heights. However, a strong gust blows Yukiji plummeting down, and Hayate jumps after her, but the bento is now ruined. Hinagiku and Yukiji apologize, and they run into Nagi, who has surmised the situation. She thanks Hayate for coming anyway and tries to skip classes so she can eat, to Hayate's protests. Hinagiku looks on, somewhat interested in the Senzanin family's butler. Hayate prepares Nagi for her school, but she decides to sleep in instead. Maria tells Hayate that Nagi often skips school because of her sheltered upbringing. She dislikes going outside. Suddenly, Nagi's childhood friend, Sakuya, crashes in through the window. Sakuya wants to check out Hayate, intrigued by Nagi's new butler, who correctly assumes he looks quite poor. She challenges Hayate to be a comedian, being one herself. He performs some gags which satisfy her, and Sakuya tells Nagi that Hayate is a good butler. Afterwards, Sakuya learns that another mutual friend, Asumi, is also due to arrive, but Asumi gets lost, worrying her and Nagi. Meanwhile, Maria instructs Hayate to go out on an errand, wearing a rather expensive coat, and is told not to dirty it in any way. Along the way, Hayate encounters various obstacles, all of which almost get on his coat, but he manages to avoid it. He decides to walk through the park, which he decides is a safer route. He encounters the lost Asumi, who is attempting to buy from a vending machine using paper seals. Asumi's bodyguards arrive, and Hayate carries her away. However, while attempting to keep himself and Asumi from falling into a lake, the coat breaks. Hayate leaves Asumi at the Senzanin estate while he goes out to complete Maria's task. Asumi's bodyguards are still searching for Hayate, believing he kidnapped her. Asumi finally arrives at the mansion and recounts the earlier events of the day. Nagi realizes that Hayate may be in trouble and asks Maria to help him. Meanwhile, Hayate is still thinking of a way to raise money to pay for the broken coat when he ran into the loan sharks from before. However, Asumi's bodyguards arrive as well and assume that Hayate is associated with the loan sharks. The two groups draw their swords, but when Hayate attempts to escape instead, they all turn on him. Hayate manages to survive and makes his way back, but he develops a fever and is bedridden. Asumi cares for Hayate, which makes Nagi jealous, so she wants to cook Hayate some porridge. But Maria, Sakuya, and Asumi all know Nagi's cooking is terrible. Tama comments Hayate might die. Hayate tastes the porridge, which is terrible as expected, but not wanting to hurt Nagi's feelings, he finishes all of it. Later, Nagi overhears Maria and Hayate talking about Nagi's porridge, which she learns she accidentally put dishwashing liquid in it, thinking it was oil, and realizes her porridge was terrible. She sneaks into Hayate's bed later that night to give him a thank you kiss, but Hayate wakes up, which prompts Nagi to call him an idiot. The next morning, Hayate meets Wataru and his maid Saki, and learns that Wataru is Nagi's fiancé. Wataru and Nagi do not get along, and neither are amicable to their arranged marriage. It also turns out Wataru likes Asumi. When Wataru sees Asumi infatuated with Hayate, Wataru challenges him to a duel. Hayate feigns defeat on purpose, as he thinks this will make Asumi fall in love with Wataru, thus canceling the marriage. But it backfires, and Asumi likes Hayate even more. This hurts Wataru's pride, and he leaves alone. Hayate wants to apologize to Wataru, who he learns lives in the top floor of his family's company building, but he learns that Maria, Nagi, and Asumi have never ridden a train before. Hayate takes Asumi and Nagi out to the subway, but Asumi gets lost almost immediately. They find her in an underground construction site, and after a brief encounter with rats, they return home. Nagi gives Hayate a package for Wataru, and he sets out again. He meets Saki, who he learns does not handle men very well. Saki takes Hayate to a video rental store, which is the Tachibana Group's last remaining business because of bankruptcy. Hayate now respects Wataru and apologizes for his behavior earlier, but learns that his father rented out several videos from Wataru's store under Hayate's name, leaving behind a debt of 1.58 million yen. Meanwhile, after being tricked by Sakuya earlier, Asumi attempts to buy a subway ticket to Rio de Janeiro. Hayate insists that Nagi go to school, not knowing that the reason Nagi stays home is so that she can spend more time with Hayate. Nagi calls Hayate into her room and dresses him up in a sailor uniform, much to his embarrassment. He is worried because several days earlier, Klaus trained Hayate in manliness, and if Klaus were to see him in a girly outfit, he is afraid he will be fired. When Maria arrives, she joins in, and Hayate is dressed up in a catgirl outfit, which surprisingly suits him. This causes Tama to go into heat, who pounces him into the courtyard. Hayate subdues Tama, but Klaus notices him, unaware it is Hayate. After a brief chase, Klaus is knocked out by Maria and hurriedly runs away to change. Later that night, Hayate sees Maria playing billiards, and she invites him to play. She tells the story of how 8 years ago, Nagi was made fun of for drawing manga, but Asumi was genuinely interested in what Nagi made, forming a special bond between them. They made a bet over a game of billiards. The loser must do anything the winner has to say. Maria implies to Hayate that the quickest way to pay off his debt is to marry Nagi, but Hayate replies that marrying that way would just mean he was marrying Nagi for her money. Maria feels Hayate is a good man and lets him win. Before Hayate can ask for his reward, Nagi appears, jealous that Hayate is playing with Maria, and beats him up. Hayate, who was planning on asking for something slightly lewd of Maria, instead asks her to forgive him for ruining the coat from the other day. Hayate learns of Nagi's grandfather and the president of the Sanzanin company, Mikado. Maria suggests they visit him so they can introduce Hayate, and they do so, despite Nagi's protests. Sakuya also comes with them, as her family is close to the Sanzanins. They arrive at Mikado's estate, a massive European castle. Hayate is initially tied up by the castle's butlers, but Nagi explains he is the new butler. Hayate explores the estate, who comments on how valuable everything looks. Hayate meets an old man who he initially assumes to be a groundskeeper. Hayate tells the groundskeeper about the circumstances to him becoming a butler, and the groundskeeper, who turns out to be Mikado, calls his life of paying off a debt worthless. Mikado gives Hayate a pendant, a guiding stone, and tells him not to lose it, if he truly believes his life is not worthless. Later, Nagi and Mikado meet, but Nagi refuses the Sanzanin estate, saying that her other economic ventures are enough. But Mikado says that Nagi will soon die because there are many people who will do anything for her fortune. He then explains that the estate will be handed over to a person who can make Nagi cry and apologize. Meanwhile, Hayate is thinking about what Mikado told him, and if his life is truly useless. Nagi finds Hayate, who wants to leave, but is suddenly attacked by an assailant, who begs Nagi to apologize to her so he can inherit the estate. When this fails, the assailant attacks Hayate instead. This makes Hayate resolve to protect Nagi at all costs, as he doesn't want her to end up in a life of poverty. Hayate defeats the assailant, and even though he still does not know what his dream is, for now, he pledges to Nagi his devotion to her. Hayate, Maria, and Nagi return home, while Sakuya is left behind, as she failed to board the helicopter on time. Hayate asks Maria what her dream is, to which she replies she just wants to see Nagi grow up well. This makes Maria curious as to what Hayate's dream is, and later asks him what it is. Hayate says his dream was the same since he was in elementary school, to live in a 3 LDK house, which is a Japanese term for a house with 3 individual rooms, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen. This makes Maria feel sorry for Hayate, and she gives him the rest of the day off, and tells him to buy a new phone. Hayate goes to the city and buys a new phone, but wonders what his high school friends are doing now. He goes back to his old school, where he meets his old classmate, Ayumu, who has a crush on him, and is happy to see him. He considers going back to school, but he learns from a teacher that he has dropped out. Last Christmas, his parents went to retrieve the remaining tuition money. Hayate is disappointed and says goodbye, but in a bid to get him to stay, Ayumu confesses her love to him. Hayate feels Nagi would be sad, so he rejects her, which angers Ayumu. Hayate returns home where Nagi registers her phone number on Hayate's phone. The next day, Ayumu is at Wataru's video rental shop to return some videos. She leaves right before Hayate arrives, but she sees him leaving the store, and she follows him back to the Sanzanin mansion. She is caught by security, but Maria asks for her release, and she uses this chance to escape. However, she runs into Tama, who attacks her. She calls for Hayate to help, who arrives and saves her. Nagi arrives, and upon meeting Nishizawa, both realize that they are love rivals for Hayate's affection. Ayumu leaves for the time being. Later, Ayumu and Hayate, although apart, are thinking of each other. Hayate feels bad for turning down Ayumu's confession. He learns that Nagi has enrolled him into Hakuo Academy, and she will pay for the tuition as well. Hayate breaks down in tears, thankful for a chance to go to school again. Despite this, Hayate must still pass the entrance exam, which is the very next day. Hayate furiously studies, as his grades from his old school are just average. Klaus and Tama visit him throughout the night to teach him, but ends up just bothering him, and he angrily throws them out. The next day, while on the way to school, Yukichi informs Hayate and Nagi that she will be the proctor for the exam, but reveals that it is not an ordinary written test. It will be Redmond-style exam, a test based on answering a variety of strange questions. Yukichi brings Hayate to the exam room, where Hayate retrieves a banana and is attacked by monkeys. Yukichi says that this was just a joke, and she made it this way for Hayate to loosen up. The real written exam begins, but Hayate is mentally and physically drained while doing so. Hayate answers all the questions, but is worried if he passed or not. Nagi reassures him that he will pass, and the two walk home. However, the superintendent informs Hayate and Nagi that Hayate failed, who was just 1 point away from passing. The superintendent remarks that maybe if Hayate was calmer, he could have passed. Back at home, Nagi, Maria, and Hayate begin planning a celebration party, unaware of what was to come.